mine-resistant vehicles, grenade launchers, and night vision goggles. All of this and more is military-grade equipment, but the people using them are often domestic law enforcement officers. Through a program called the 1033 program, surplus military equipment is transferred to police across the country by the Defense Logistics Agency, or DLA. But this equipment isn't always used as intended, or even used properly.
We could have easily written a justification so that we could have gotten rifles, mine-resistant vehicles, any number of items that could have been quite dangerous, could have ended up in our hands.
That's POGO's senior investigative advisor, Wayne McElrath. While working at the Government Accountability Office, or GAO, in 2017, he helped create a fictitious law enforcement agency that was designed to investigate the 1033 program. I sat down with Wayne to chat about his investigation, as well as oversight of this program.
What kind of shocked you about this investigation, though? Because I know that a lot ended up coming from that.
Yes, a lot did come from that. It was surprising to me that it was so easy to spoof a investigative law enforcement organization and to gain access. With our Fargo Police Department, we created a justification where we could have received all types of items, including those controlled items that were lethal. But we had no police officers, we had no building, we had no cars, we had nothing. But we could have easily written a justification so that we could have gotten rifles, mine-resistant vehicles, any number of items that could have been quite dangerous, could have ended up in our hands.
You literally got, what was it, over $1 million worth of equipment?
We got $1 million at the initial onset, and we could have gotten more, but we just chose not to allow the organization to save face in the fact that an unauthorized organization gained access in the first place. But we were able to, once we gained access, we were actually able to get simulated bombs, simulated rifles, night vision devices, range finding equipment for snipers, which is the type of equipment that should be relegated to special teams within law enforcement, let alone not being given out to a fake or fictitious law enforcement organization that we just created out of thin air.
Yeah, because you would think they would have at least some kind of process of like Googling the address you provided, because it was literally a vacant parking lot.
If they had actually done any due diligence at all, they would have quickly identified that we were not a law enforcement organization, especially at the federal level, because most federal organizations' email addresses or websites end in .gov. Ours did not end in .gov. We spliced .gov in, but we couldn't buy a .gov web page because they are controlled by, I believe it's GSA.
You weren't even using special technology or special tactics granted to you like by the government. You literally were using things to gain access to this program that a citizen could have had access to, potentially.
The items that we use to conduct this body of work could be purchased by anyone online. They are commercial. We did not use any of our law enforcement contacts. We did not use any of our law enforcement accesses to be able to subvert or to get into this particular program. We use anything that a normal citizen or a terrorist group, for that matter, would have used to be able to get into this program. As I stated before, we didn't have access to a .gov website. So we went to a commercial vendor. We got /US and we threw .gov in there somewhere, and that seemed to be enough.
So why should people like me or the general public care that you were able to get this equipment so easily? Like, why is that a problem in the first place?
We received controlled items, which could be potentially lethal items. But within the realm of controlled items, it includes rifles, it includes handguns, it includes grenade launchers, it includes bayonets, it includes mine-resistant vehicles, all of these things that can be used to cause serious harm or damage within the general public.
So maybe law enforcement, local law enforcement, shouldn't really have that equipment in the first place either.
For regular, everyday policing, dealing with the normal public, I don't believe that local law enforcement should have access to that type of equipment for everyday or general policing. For those specialized high-risk warrants, hostage situations where that is required, maybe. But what we find with the vast majority of items is that you encounter what's known as mission creep, where an item is provided for one purpose, but then because you have access to it and it is not being monitored well, it's being used for a variety of purposes that probably they shouldn't be used for.
It's interesting because in like researching for this video, I came across a lot of YouTube videos, I think actually from the DLA, and they talk to a lot of local law enforcement, and they're just so excited and hyped up that they have this equipment. They're like in the videos, they're like running around. They're like, look, we have this armored vehicle and we have all of these guns. I think one person even said, yeah, we don't even have this many officers, but we have all these excess guns. And it's just, it was even just like before talking to you and watching that, I was like, wow, that just seems so unnecessary.
Exactly. It makes no sense. But the thing is that because there is no community monitoring of this program, it's more of the law enforcement officers who create a justification. They submit their justification and they obtain those items. Once they're actually in their inventories, we can't really speak to how that equipment is being used. There needs to be more monitoring of the utilization of that of this equipment once they actually receive it. And with some of the equipment that they're receiving, let's say the mine-resistant vehicles, it requires special tools and mechanics to be able to maintain those. So to go out and get this equipment that requires special maintenance, special equipment, special training, for the fact that just because you can, isn't a good justification for me.
Is there any way to balance this actual justified need for some of this equipment, like a helicopter for search and rescue, for example, and use with effective oversight? Like, is there a line?
Just because it's free, just because you don't have to, it doesn't come out of your budget, shouldn't be a reason to say, oh, that looks great or that looks cool, let's go out and get one of those. We'll figure out a reason to have it or how to use it later. Because sometimes trying to figure out how to use that might be infringing upon the rights of the population for which you serve, or potentially intimidating the population for which you serve. The police are community servants. And being in that capacity, the police should be able to be engaged in a way that is civil. When you are clad in military-grade equipment, military-grade items, I think it steps up the intimidation factor where now you're no longer approachable. Now you seem like an occupying force. Now the community really doesn't want to engage you in a civil manner. And I think we need to get back to that level of civility in policing, where the police are a part of our community that serve our needs or assist us in those most desperate times of need, as opposed to, okay, either obey or die, or I don't want to call the police because I don't want this to turn into a bigger problem.